Started off at McNeil Island, and then the legislature, in their infinitesimal wisdom, closed that down. And I served at the reception center in Shelton before coming up to the position I'm in now. So what I'm going to talk about today, and I doubt I'll get through all of it, but I'm going to try to get through as much as I can, is when I was asked to come and be a part of this, I said, well, you know, what is it that you want me to be saying? I'm not a veteran. I'm a forensic and clinical psychologist, and I work in prisons. And they said, well, can you tell us anything about, just demystify what's going on in prison, so people that do have folks that are justice-involved veterans that come to prison may have a better idea about what's going on. Because I think a lot of folks have some misconceptions about what goes on in prison, from, I don't know, Oz, Orange is the New Black, that kind of thing. Where there's some truth to it, but if you want to see a really good training video for what happens in corrections, I would recommend something more like Shawshank Redemption. Anybody seen that movie before? Yeah, great training film for that. So what I'm going to talk today about is the DSC population, real briefly, and what the primary clinical concerns are that we find among our population, and how it is that people get into services and treatment in prison in Washington. And mind you, Washington is a very different system from other ones. I've worked in Ohio, North Carolina, Texas, and Mississippi, and we're very fortunate in Washington to have a much more comprehensive and progressive system, but we still have people that do fall through the cracks, or people that don't get the services that they need. So my hope is that we'll be able to talk about how it is that people get services, and what kinds of services we have, and really what our challenges are working in a prison, and what our future directions are for that. And I can tell you ahead of time that our services for veterans, in particular for mental health, are limited. And you're going to see why that is, and really what the programs are that are available for veterans, or what Jim Harm's going to talk about. So just real briefly, our breakdown, you have this in front of you as well, our breakdown is about 92% male, 8% female. We have 12 different institutions, 1 for women, the rest are all for men. We are a population of primarily Caucasian here, followed by African American, and then small slices beyond that. Our veteran population is about 8% or so, and it's because of programs like diversion, like the Veterans Court, that this is actually lower. I think the national average hovers a little bit more, around 10, 12% in some cases, and so we actually have fewer of them in our prison system. And again, that also depends on who's being identified as being a veteran. As the judge pointed out, depending on how you ask the question, some people may or may not respond affirmatively to it. And so it's really important to be able to identify them. If not at booking in the jail, then certainly when they come into what we call reception at the prison. And are folks here familiar with how prisons work? Just a show of hands, how many people here are pretty familiar with how prisons work? Okay, good. How many people are not familiar with how it works? Okay, more people, so this is going to be hopefully useful for some of you. The rest just, write haikus or something that have to do with the justice system. So who is it that we have in prison? This is just, again, this is almost an oversimplification. But about a third of the people that are coming in have some kind of a potentially qualifying diagnosis. And we'll talk about what that is in a moment. That's higher for women. And the reason it's higher for women is typically because women are more likely to request and be receptive to getting mental health treatment. And so they're more likely to be diagnosed with it. Men are more likely to ignore it, deny it, or otherwise try to keep from being identified that way, particularly in prison. And if you can imagine why a male might want to not identify as being mentally ill in prison. You think about why that might be? It's the main reason. Stigma, being viewed as weak. You definitely do not want to appear that way in prison if you're a man, or a female for that matter, but certainly with men. 22% are seriously mentally ill, and so that definition kind of varies. And if you're asking me, what is the definition of serious mental illness? I will avoid you, and I will walk away, or I'll otherwise distract you with my magician-like tricks, because it's not a real hard and fast definition. But typically we're talking about a couple of things here, which is it's a severity of symptoms that individuals have, and a functional impairment, so the inability to function in one or more areas of their life. And so mood disorders, not surprisingly, showing up in prison, and also psychotic disorders are severely overrepresented in prison. I'll mention why that is. About 20% of our offenders are in active treatment of some sort. And active treatment could be that they are involved in individual or group therapy. Most of them are taking some sort of psychotropic medications because for the vast majority of people, and this is civilians included, there is a real apprehension to engaging in treatment because it's messy, because it requires, you know, our involvement, and because we live in the medical world where when you have an injury like breaking a bone, you go to a doctor and it puts you in a cast. For how long? Everyone's saying it. 6 weeks. Go ahead, shout out. Be proud of the fact that you have better medical knowledge than I do. 6 weeks, yeah. But you go in and you say to somebody, well, I've got major depression. How long is it going to take to get better? I have no idea. So, because it depends on what it is that you're actually engaging in therapy. There's an old adage in motivational interviewing that you may have heard of. You can lead that horse to water, but you can't make him thirsty. And that's really the important point, is that you can't make people want to engage in treatment. You can provide them with everything right in front of them. They will just, they'll starve right in front of you. Substance dependence and substance abuse is a huge problem. The stats that we have are 75% or so. I would actually argue that closer to 90% or more of our offender population has a substance abuse or substance dependence problem. And when we talk about individuals who have PTSD or trauma, which is a huge percentage of our population, the overlap of substance abuse is even higher. And you can think about this. The types of individuals that end up in prison oftentimes have had a very chaotic childhood. Now mind you, having a chaotic childhood or having a childhood or an upbringing or events in your life where you can say as an outsider, wow, I can see how you would have PTSD, that's different from actually having PTSD. People respond differently. And again, what it comes down to is the severity of the symptoms and the impairment that it has in their lives. And where it gets tricky in prison is that we don't require the same types of things of them that are required in the outside world. The level of independent functioning in the outside world is much greater than what's asked for in prison. And again, for those of you who've seen like Shawshank Redemption and these prison films that are even remotely accurate, you come in and you at first, as we say, hate the walls, then you get used to them, enough time passes and you can't do without them. And we really do create a problem oftentimes in prison where we institutionalize people, inadvertently often. And so what you'll see is a lot more PTSD and trauma-related issues in there, and that goes hand in hand with substance abuse, and it goes hand in hand because of what it is that substance abuse represents for many people. And you've heard the term self-medicating before, right? Self-medication is actually pretty rare. Self-medication means that you are taking illicit substances in order to function normally. You know, I have people that say, oh, I was self-medicating on methamphetamine for 15 years. I'm like, how did you have a job and keep a family? I didn't. That's not self-medicating. What it is escape, and it is, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism, but it's covering. It's what it's doing. And like I said, you know, we're a medical society, so we want an immediate answer. We want to get away from it right now. And so we do have a lot of folks that are looking for their answers in some type of substance. And if they come to prison, they're going to want to have some of those medications that are going to mimic the effects of some of the illicit substances they've had. And mind you, again, for something like depression, which is a major component of the individuals that we see in prison, antidepressants can take 19, 20, 21 days, 4 weeks before they start having an effect. And in fact, it's not an automatically feel better. It's, wow, for the past 10, 15 days, I haven't been as depressed. But we don't want that. We want this feeling to go away right now. Stop it. Get it away from me, right? And so we end up creating, this is an entirely different talk, we end up creating in prison a black market for those medications that some people get that have really sedating effects. But I'm not going to go there because then I just get irritated. The other thing that happens in prison a lot is that we do have a lot of undiagnosed or underdiagnosed TBI, it's a traumatic brain injury, fetal alcohol effects and fetal alcohol syndrome, and there are other cognitive disorders as well. So the difficulty that individuals have with attention, concentration, memory, executive functioning, being able to follow, process through, and be able to function independently. And frequently, that ends up running afoul of the rules we have in prison. And think about what happens then. In prison, there is very much of a paramilitary culture in there. And there's very much of a black and white, you do what we say, or we're going to lock you up, we're going to infract you within prison, we're going to punish you for it. We need our pound of flesh. But I'm going to say this about that. And I want you to remember a couple of things. Both my parents were shrinks. My mom and dad met in a my mom's being attacked by an ape in the primate lab at MIT. It's a long story. The point is that she had a couple of things that she used to say that were like really, wow, that's really cool, Mom. I'd love to say that as a shrink myself. And one thing she says, it's not one thing, it's one thing too many. So that's important to recognize, that there are these straws that break the camel's back. And another thing to keep in mind is that we can oftentimes make things worse by not recognizing the individuality of the situation. In prisons, we treat everyone basically the same. And so when there are rules in prison and you break them, you have the same exact thing happen to each and every individual. We're trying to change that by identifying, hey, those individuals who have mental health issues that are contributing to their infraction behavior, sort of like a mental health court within the prison, saying, well, is this actually contributing to it, and are there alternatives for what we can do? Because we end up with people in solitary confinement or isolation, IMU, intensive management unit, for 6 months, a year. Some people end up in there for 10, 15 years, and that does not make somebody better. So primary clinical concerns we have in prison, I'm not sure if you can see this really well, but the biggest ones we have, obviously major depression, bipolar disorder, which by the way tends to be overdiagnosed, I think, or misdiagnosed. People say, I'm up one minute, I'm down the next. That's not bipolar disorder. And it's a criminal, in my opinion, misdiagnosis. Because the kinds of things that oftentimes get people into trouble, that I mentioned before, with this underdiagnosed TBI and other cognitive disorders, is this what we call affective dysregulation. It's just our 50-cent word that shrinks use at Target to identify people who are other shrinks that everyone else is like, what the hell are you talking about? And that means that they don't have the ability to regulate their normal emotions. So there is a lot of overreacting and underreacting and not having that normal communication and give and take in their interactions with people. And that's not bipolar disorder. And the reason I say it's criminal to call it that, and I'm only being a tad glib, is because if you miss the diagnosis, you miss the treatment. And you actually make people worse. So the other things, though, we have in there, schizophrenia, or other psychotic disorders, and then, of course, PTSD and other anxiety disorders. Now, PTSD is an anxiety disorder. We break it out from there because there actually is a lot more of the PTSD in prison. And when you look at the national averages, so the column there on the right is the U.S. So on general, you have about 5 to 10% of people that have diagnosable substance dependence or abuse issues. I think that's probably an underestimation. But look at it in prison. And the one to really focus on in here is the psychotic disorders. 1 to 2% in the population. The actual incidence rate, prevalence rate of schizophrenia is about 1.6%. So 1.6 people in 100 are diagnosed with schizophrenia. This is worldwide, by the way. This is in Chelan County, this is in King County, this is in Detroit, this is in Kuala Lumpur. It's a genetic disease. In prison, it's 10 to 20%. So any mathematicians in here? That's 10 times more in prison. So I want you to think about why it is that people with schizophrenia end up in prison more often than in the general population. And the reason for that? Because they oftentimes get into trouble for doing things that are nuisance behaviors, what in prison and constitutes out of bounds. Or things like mischief. I have a lot of individuals who have psychotic disorders who are delusional, who have false beliefs that they firmly hold that the rest of society doesn't believe and will punish them for. They get to courts, and oftentimes the courts are like, all right, you know what? I'm sentencing you to a year and a day, which is when you go to prison, essentially. And they go to prison, and one of the reasons they do it is because they know that they can get treatment in prison, which is a sad state of affairs. So we end up with a much greater breadth and depth of serious mental illness in prison than we do in the community frequently. Let me just tell you this right now. If you're going on a cross-country trip and you commit a crime in Mississippi, drive faster. Do not cross state lines, go to a federal prison. It's another adage that we have is, go ye forth and do no crime, but if you do make it federal time, you've heard this before, it's a rhyme, right? Write it down. But definitely, Mississippi, don't go there. Wow. Okay, so a little bit about, so I got about probably 10 minutes left. 5 minutes? Are you angry? Okay, so anyway, I'm glad I gave you the presentation. So what happens in prison is people will go into screening and reception. That happens at Shelton for the men and at Purdy for the women. And you take a look at the numbers that go in there. 300 to 400 a week are coming in there. And this is Shelton right here. This is where they're going in. That's the picture there. And what happens is they will go in there and they come in off the chain, which is the chain bus, and they have a mental health screening there. And so the mental health screening consists of essentially a very, very brief interaction with a mental health professional where they're asking what we call the 13 questions of doom. We had to remove one because it didn't really have any value. The 12 questions of doom. All it really means is you're asking these questions that are used to identify what level of mental health services this individual may need. And so they can be self-report, or it can be history of hospitalizations, or if they're on current medications. It can be that they deny everything, but you as a mental health professional are like, whoa, this person looks really, really off. And we then, so this is a kind of what we call a golden thread of mental health treatment, which is a good assessment. Can you get a good assessment in 5 minutes with 80 other men? By the way, they'll get stripped down to their underwear to be able to check for weapons and tattoos. 80 other men in their underwear, in a room. Basically, you have one person go up to a mental health person behind the desk here, and you have 80 convicted felons behind you in their underwear, maybe 10 or 15 feet away. How honest do you think you're going to be in disclosing information? Yes, I have mental health issues, and just so you guys know who the victim should be here, no, you'll get along with okay? So what we do is, and so that's not a good way to do it. And so we know that. And the thing is, one of the challenges we have in prison is that prisons were not designed to be treatment centers. We are the new asylums. We do treat more people with mental illness than almost anywhere else. But we're not designed for that. We're designed for housing and punishment. We want to get our pound of flesh. But another thing I want you to remember, people go to prison as punishment, not for punishment. So think about what that means. So then we may miss a lot of people, and indeed we do. But here's the thing. People come into prison, they go through these, we identify whatever it is that their issues might be, and we have a very, very low bar. If someone looks like they're fine, they can do great general population, denying everything, we still have a way to treat them if they happen to fall through the cracks. If they decompensate, they get a Dear John letter, they get some kind of a situation that causes them to go downhill. So in DOC, that's done by the inmate can refer themselves, and let's skip ahead here. It's called a kite, when the inmate is referring themselves for mental health treatment. Staff can also recognize it. Because the staff, the officers, the nurses, the kitchen workers, the program employees, everyone is watching this person every day and saying, hey, you know what, this person's off their baseline. They're able to communicate to mental health staff and say, can you check this person out? And we have policies and procedures in place that we need to respond to that and actually call the person up and talk to them, do an assessment, do an evaluation. Anytime there's any decompensation, anytime there's any crisis, we have an immediate response to that. We have mental health on call. So they're on call 24/7. They have not gotten to the point where mental health is coming in from out of the institution like at 2 in the morning to come in and evaluate someone because our main concern is keeping them safe. There's nothing magical about what mental health does. I'd like it if there were, I'd get paid more, but there's not. I just happen to know the rules, right? That's what all this is like. But so someone says they want mental health treatment. Do they necessarily get it? Well, no, not necessarily. Because remember, with 300 to 400 people coming in every week, and you have caseloads that are between 80 and 100, in some cases, one mental health professional to 180 people, how are you supposed to be able to manage that? So, what's the answer? Well, more staff. Right. More staff, where are you going to put them? And once you get more staff, what you find is once you get more staff, you get more problems. Okay? Because really, the ones I'm worried about are not the offenders at all. I'm worried about the staff. Because you're going to have your 5 to 10% of your staff that are going to cause 80 to 90% of your headaches. Just like everybody in your life. You all know who it is in your life. And if you don't know who it is, it's you. So, everyone's fine in my life. Because everyone drinks more when you're around, that's not because they're happy to see you. So we do have, and I'll end up here in a second. I'm sorry I'm not able to get through all of this, but when we have people that come into prison and we are trying to establish and triage how is it that they're going to be treated, we really do have a good system for doing that. It's a thorough mental health appraisal and then treatment. And that treatment can consist of case management. Some people just need check-ins, once a month, just to have someone to check in with. Sometimes it's just nice to get off the unit and be with someone who's not on an active felony status, there, but for the grace of God, a lot of us are out of prison, okay? It's just, I'm just saying. But some people need more intensive therapy. Now, individual therapy we'd love to do, but the fact of the matter is we don't have the resources to do that all the time. The ones we do individual therapy for are typically the more intense ones. And those will not be psychotic because people with psychotic disorders in prison tend to respond much better to medications than integration. So it's the people with PTSD and traumatic histories that we tend to do. There's cognitive processing therapy, which is a really, I've found it to be an incredibly beneficial therapy for people. We do a lot more group therapy too. And then there is, of course, we have, even if people have, you see the second one there, we have this thing called the Offender Health Plan. And that basically outlines, here's the different disorders that we treat. Here's the ones that we'll treat if there's sufficient functional impairment. Here's the ones we don't treat. The fact of the matter is, if anything causes enough problems in prison, and particularly, we can have a nexus between their mental health and their potential recidivism, or their committing crimes in the future, we'll treat that. But it's kind of a juggle to do that. And they can also have what we call 3 for free. And that just means that a person can be seen every calendar year for 3 sessions without having to have any qualifying diagnosis at all. It's not exactly free in that it's free of diagnosis, but individuals in prison still do have to pay if they initiate the first mental health appointment. And so that's $4. And I got it right here. You know how long it takes to earn $4 in prison? At 32 cents an hour, 42 cents an hour? Well, I mean, it takes a while to get that. And so you think about that. That's a disincentive for a lot of people to seek treatment. And so how do they get treatment? How do they bypass that? A lot of folks in prison are pretty creative. So they don't get charged if staff refer them. And so if they do something that gets them noticed by staff refers them, they've circumvented that. Frankly, I would love to get rid of the copay because it's a barrier and it's stupid to do. There aren't any governors in here, are there? It's stupid to do. Yeah, if the governor were here, I'd tell it to his face. Anyway. So real briefly, I'm just going to go, and I know I'm almost up on time here. I made a haiku for some of this stuff too. I like haikus, I write a lot. So challenges are that we have high caseloads due to this high concentration of mental health in prison. And so that means we got to be creative about how we do it. One of the things as a treatment provider you have to be able to do is to get the sick people into your office. See the right people. How it used to be in DOC is you would go in and the people that were being seen by mental health like 10, 15 years ago were typically the sociopaths and anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders because they're actually pretty easy to treat when you get people in there. And the sociopaths because they're fun. They're interesting. They make you feel good about yourself. You just go into work and you have people that they're manipulative. They're not mentally ill. We don't need to be treating them. In fact, it's counterproductive to treat somebody who's a psychopath. If I find out someone's a psychopath, we no longer do treatment with you. Go away. You're perfectly capable of harming someone. I got better people that I got not better. But honestly, there's other people I need to treat, okay? But the other problems that we have are that, again, with mental health, the mentally ill, particularly severely mentally ill, are much more likely to be the victims of crime than they are to be the perpetrators of it. You think about this sort of herd mentality. If you were going to attack a herd or something, which one are you going to attack? The one lagging behind, the one with the broken leg, the one that stands out, the one that looks odd. Same thing happens in prison. And our release planning sucks in many cases. We give people $40 in gate money and a Greyhound bus ticket one way, and oftentimes releasing homeless, and they have to go back to their county's first conviction. And that means that if somebody is from, say, King County, all their resources, their family, everything is there, and they're driving to Wenatchee because we've got great conference weather, and so they come to Wenatchee, they happen to commit a crime here, it's their first crime ever, first felony ever, and then when they get out of prison, do they go back to King County where all the support is? No, they come to Chelan. That's where they're releasing to. Where's the governor? Still no? That's a stupid-ass idea. So, oh no! Let me just take a moment and say, Jay.
He just wrote a comment.
I have nothing but the utmost respect for you. Pixelate this.
My service just disconnected. I don't know how that.
Thank God for crappy wireless in Japan. But I do want to point out about the ORCS program. Jim, is it okay if we just do this real quick? All right. Because this is kind of, I think, going into, this is a segue into Jim. How many people have heard of the ORCS program? So 6 people. Awesome. It used to be called the Dangerous Mentally Ill Offender Program, for those of you who, and you can imagine how great that was in being able to transition people. Essentially what it is identifying those individuals. This is one of the best practices we have. And the ORCS program is designed to find individuals, to identify those individuals who are actuarially designated as being very violent or have a high violent history and serious persistent mental illness. And the idea there is to identify this group of people and be able to provide both in-reach and outreach services. So when they get up 90 days before release, they have the community providers come into the prison, meet with them, give them a familiar face, they get to know who they are, because that demystification and lowering of that anxiety is one of the things that is the most important in the first 24 to 48 hours when you get out of there. But they also have funds that are available for them. It used to be, it's about $60,000 over 5 years, and you don't just give it to them. It's done through a payee, but it helps to provide for the things that are most important for them. Housing, if they need to get transportation, things we don't do are like the therapeutic akita. Somebody asked for it one time. I don't know what that was about, but yeah, it was. I tried to ask, but it's too much. But it helps assist them with their transition because these are the types of things that it provides. The ORCS program funds are used for things like mental health treatment, substance abuse programs, uncovered medical expenses, and specialized treatment, employment, all this type of stuff. And here's the important point. The recidivism rate for general population offenders is about 33% over a 3-year period. And we define that narrowly as another conviction that results in you coming back to prison. That's not another crime committed of any sort. That number is actually higher. For the ORCS offenders, it's lower than 13% over a 3-year period. Because we're able to come in, provide those treatment services for them, and follow them out in the community, meet them at the door, take them to their appointments, and just, as you know, the medical doctors would say, setting the bone right early. And this has been going on for 15 years. It started off as a pilot program and keeps getting refunded by the legislature because we keep providing evidence that this is actually working. The one thing that's mainly changed about it is they changed the name from DMIO because if you're out there trying to get housing and you say, what's DMIO? Dangerous mentally ill offender. Well, I'm sorry. What was it? Dangerous what did you say? Mental ill offender. This has got a great view here. Whatever. It's like we changed it from dangerous mentally ill offender because it scared the crap out of people. And we changed it to ORCS, which unfortunately came around at the same time the Lord of the Rings trilogy came out. So you want us to heat food here? I'm like, look, well, I said name it the Orcas, you know, so at least it's more like, nobody listens to me. Anyway, so I'm going to hand it over to Jim. He's going to talk a bit about reentry, but if you've got questions about the ORCS program or anything in prison, it's difficult to shut me up once I have coffee in me. So again, sorry Jay, Mr. Inslee, and I'll turn it over to
Any questions before Sean get into my PowerPoint up? But any questions?
Yes. I want to know what he's got against Mississippi and go Red Sox.
I almost got shot in Mississippi twice when I was doing prison work there, so they mistook me for an offender. And I'm from Boston, so different socks.
You need to talk to the judge.
Yes, other questions? Yes?
Yeah, so what are the statistics for people that go into prison without a mental disorder and out of prison?
The recidivism rate you're talking about? Yeah. That one is about the 33% for over a 3-year period. It's probably a little bit higher. The issue that we have here is that we are assuming that people that are identified as seriously mentally ill or have mental illness are accurately identified. The problem we have is false negatives and false positives. So a false positive is when people are claiming that they're mentally ill or get diagnosed as such when they're not. And false negatives are the opposite. You find more false negatives in the male prison because more of them are saying they don't have mental illness. And unless something really dramatic comes up, we're like, fine, we can't force them to do treatment. More false negatives, and I say this with a hint of salt, occur in the women's prison because women are much more likely to ask for services and then be engaged in them. So it's difficult sometimes to say, but in general, when you mix in those, it kind of comes out in the wash. And so the recidivism rate for individuals who don't have mental illness understand your question correctly, tends to be a bit higher. Other questions? Yes?
I am a budget assistant to Governor Inslee. And
Oh, no.
What?
Well, it looks like my time at the DOC is coming to a close. Budget assistant for Governor Inslee, seriously? Is nobody screaming in the audience here? Great, I'll be talking to you over vodka or something. Yes. So for the ORCS program, what is the living allowance that they're given? It's determined through a payee. And so, you know, what we don't want to do is we can tell you this right now. For individuals releasing, housing is probably the single most important thing that they're able to get. Being able to have and so there's often subsidized, or they find places where like, I'll give you an example in King County, for instance. In King County, Sound Mental Health works with offenders. They have a contract that works. And so they have a place, they used to have a couple of places where they would place those individuals that they had a contract with. And it's a coordination between DOC and DSHS to do that. So there's not so much I don't think, a hard and fast cap on it. But if you use up all the money on housing and you're not able to have it for anything else, we're really kind of shooting ourselves in the foot.
Well, and that's the cost of housing is accounting for one bedroom.
But it's a set rate, though. It's an agreement with the Sound Mental Health and their housing provider. So it's not market rate. It's a set.
It's a contract rate.
Can they get a voucher?
No, I don't know. I don't think they get something different from they can't sort of double dip in that regard, because there are housing vouchers that individuals have. They're not in that program.
We coordinate that.
Okay, any other burning questions other that doesn't have anything to do with the governor's office? Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Bart. My name is Jim Harms. I'm the Reentry Systems Administrator for the Washington State Department of Corrections, and I sit in the cubicle outside of Bart's office. And it's a real privilege to be able to work and collaborate with Bart and Dr. Carrie Rainier. My presentation, I'll go a little fast, but I just want to comment on the ORCS program. The ORCS program is so successful that when I get to the end of my slides, if I ever do, our reentry plan that we developed under our Second Chance grant was based upon the ORCS model, because it's a successful model and we like to duplicate what is already working. So again, my name is Jim Harms. I'm the Reentry Systems Administrator. My presentation today is really about supporting successful transition for the justice-involved veterans. The goal of the presentation today is just to understand more about the DOC strategic goals, understanding the reentry division, understanding of the Veterans Mission Housing, which is also known as the Vet Pods, knowledge of what are appropriate veteran housing program placements, and highlight some current outreach and inreach programs offered to the men housed in the Veterans Pod. The Department of Corrections has believe it or not, a one-page strategic plan. We'll talk a little bit about this, but we have strategic anchors working together for safe communities to improve public safety and to operate a safe and humane corrections system in part.